To truly comprehend the deep jungle, you must first abandon any concept of a landscape that exists merely on a flat, two-dimensional plane. What you are entering is a vertical nation, a layered metropolis of life stacked from the dark, decaying floor to the wind-whipped sun roof of the emergent layer. Each stratum, a world unto itself, with its own climate, its own rules, and its own citizens. This architectural marvel begins at the forest floor, a place of profound silence and perpetual twilight, where less than 2% of the sunlight filtering through the dense canopy above ever reaches. This is not a barren place. However, it is a realm of relentless recycling, a slow-motion engine powered by decomposition. A fallen giant of a tree, a kapok, or ironwood that may have stood for a millennium becomes an instant city, a niche for thousands of organisms. Fungi with networks so vast and intricate, they challenge our definitions of intelligence weaved through the damp soil, breaking down lignin and cellulose into biochemical alchemy that releases nutrients back into a system that hoards them jealously. Giant beetles, millipedes the length of your hand, and anonymous armies of microbes work in shifts, turning death into fertile potential. The soil here is surprisingly thin and poor, precisely because the system is so efficient at locking life into living matter. Moving upward just a few meters, we enter the understory, a cramped, still, and humid zone of shrubs, young trees, and hardy plants that have evolved to thrive in low light. This is the kingdom of patience. Saplings of canopy giants wait here in a state of arrested development. Sometimes for decades, their growth stunted as they bide their time, storing energy in their roots until a catastrophic event, a tree fall from a storm, creates a light gap, a sudden shaft of heavenly illumination. Then, in a frantic, once-in-a-lifetime race, they explode vertically, straining every cellular resource to reach the light before their competitors do. This layer is also the domain of stealth and strategy. Plants like the bizarre-looking monster develop leaves with deep, almost artistic fenestrations, holes, and splits not for beauty, but as a brilliant evolutionary adaptation to allow torrential rain and hurricane-force winds to pass through without shredding the leaf to ribbons. It is here you find the walking palms, trees that appear to slowly migrate on stilt-like roots over the forest floor. A mythologized process that is actually a real, albeit extremely slow, response to seeking better light. And then we breach into the canopy, the primary engine of the rainforest. This is the dense, green photosynthetic ceiling of the jungle, home to an estimated 50% of all terrestrial life on Earth. It is a world of branches intertwined into highways, of suspended soil created by decaying leaves, caught in the crooks of trees called canopy soil, and of microclimates that can vary drastically from one tree to the next. The temperature, humidity, and wind speed here are entirely different from the forest floor. This is the realm of the specialists, the gliders like flying frogs who use webbed feet as parachutes, and flying snakes that flatten their bodies into aerodynamic ribbons. It's the dining room for countless primates and birds and the battleground for relentless competition for light. Liana's woody vines use the investment of trees to climb toward the sun, often strangling their hosts in a slow, botanical embrace, while epiphytes, the air plants like orchids and bromeliads, live harmlessly on the branches, collecting water and nutrients from the air and rain, creating miniature aquatic ecosystems in their leaf axils that host poison dart frog, tadpoles, and unique insect communities. Finally, punching through this green blanket of the emergent trees, the solitary titans. These are the ancient ones, individuals that can tower 70 meters or more, their massive trunks buttressed with great plank-like roots for stability in the shallow soil. They withstand the full force of the sun, wind, and storms that the sheltered layers below never feel. Their existence dictates the life below them. This vertical stratification is not just a neat description. It is the fundamental organizing principle of the jungle, a multi-level city that has perfected the art of using every single photon of energy, every molecule of nutrient. In a complex, interconnected dance that has been choreographed over 100 million years, every creature, from the soil microbe to the harpy eagle nesting in the emergent, has a specific address in this vertical nation, and its entire biology, from its shape and size to its reproductive strategy and diet, is defined by its floor in this green skyscraper. Beneath the apparent green serenity of the jungle lies a constant, invisible war being waged not with tooth and claw, but with chemistry, light, sound, and profound deception. This is a battlefield where information is the most valuable currency, and survival depends on mastering its transmission or intercepting it with ruthless efficiency. Let's start with the most foundational war, plants versus herbivores. The jungle is a giant, all-you-can-eat salad bar, and plants are static targets. Their evolutionary response has been to turn themselves into toxic, spiked, and indigestible fortresses through biochemical warfare. The rubber tree produces latex, a sticky, milky sap that gums up the mouthparts of insects. The cinchona tree produces quinine, a compound so bitter and effective at disrupting cellular processes that humans co-opted it to fight malaria. Thousands of alkaloids, terpenes, and phenols are synthesized daily, each a custom-designed poison to deter specific attackers. But the herbivores fight back with co-evolutionary arms races. The monarch caterpillar can sequester cardiac glycosides from milkweed, making itself poisonous to birds. Some insects have even learned to hijack a plant's own chemical signals. When under attack by caterpillars, many plants release volatile organic compounds, VOCs, into the air a silent, aromatic scream. This scream is a call for help to the carnivorous cavalry. Parasitoid wasps, tuned to these specific chemical signatures, will fly to the damaged plant and lay their eggs inside the living caterpillars, dooming them from within. This is a tritrophic interaction. Plant signals, herbivore suffers, predator benefits. But the communication network goes far beyond distress calls. Scientists like Suzanne Simard have revealed the Wood Wide Web, a vast, subterranean network of mycorrhizal fungi that connect the roots of trees across the forest. Through these fungal threads, trees can share nutrients, particularly carbon and phosphorus, with their own kin, even bolstering shaded seedlings. They can also send warning signals about drought, disease, or insect attacks. A beetle-infested tree can tell its neighbors to ramp up their own chemical defenses. This challenges our entire notion of a forest as a collection of individual competitors. It is, in many ways, a cooperative community, a superorganism. Now, enter the masters of deception in this information-saturated world. This is the realm of mimicry, where the line between truth and lie blurs for survival. Consider the orchid mantis, a stunning pink and white insect that doesn't just hide in a flower. It has evolved to perfectly mimic the flower itself, petals and all, to lure in pollinating insects it then devours. It is a predator disguised as a sexual lure, or the larvae of the green parrot snake, which mimics the appearance and even the jerky movement of a toxic caterpillar, earning protection from birds that have learned to avoid the model. Some plants engage in deception too. The world's largest flower, Raffles aureolea, produces no roots, stems, or leaves. It lives entirely as a parasite inside a vine. When it flowers, it emits the overpowering stench of rotting flesh. Chemical lie to attract its pollinators, carrion flies. The flies get no nectar or reward, just tricked into transporting pollen from one putrid-smelling bloom to another. Even sound is hacked. Bats use echolocation to hunt moths. In response, some tiger moths have evolved to produce rapid clicks that jam the bat's sonar, a form of acoustic warfare. Others simply announce their toxicity with their own clicks, on a signal that says, "I taste bad, don't waste your energy." This entire ecosystem is a constant, dynamic flow of information, cries for help, deceptive advertisements, cooperative whispers through fungal networks, and desperate signals of toxicity. To exist here is to be a master of manipulating This invisible data stream, where the penalty for misreading a signal or for having your own signal decoded by a predator is immediate and final. It is a world that proves that evolution is not just about physical strength, but about the control of narrative, the weaponization of perception, and the silent, chemical conversation that never stops. The relentless, humid breath of the jungle is powered by a singular, driving imperative: reproduction. In an environment where competition for space and light is ultimate, the strategies for ensuring genetic legacy are as diverse and spectacular as the life forms themselves, creating a pulsating rhythm of cycles within cycles that bind everything together in an unbreakable web of interdependence. The most spectacular expression of this is the phenomenon of synchronized reproduction known as misting or general flowering. In the Southeast Asian dipterocarp forests, for hundreds of different tree species spread over thousands of square kilometers, nothing happens for years. Then, triggered by subtle shifts in temperature or El Niño-related drought stress, the entire forest erupts in a simultaneous colossal flowering event. For a few weeks, the canopy becomes a pastel riot of blossoms. The evolutionary logic is predator satiation. If trees flowered alone, their seeds would be instantly devoured by a resident population of insects, birds, and mammals. But by flooding the market with billions of seeds all at once, the predators simply cannot eat them all. The surplus ensures that a critical number of seeds survive to germinate. This event resets the entire food chain, triggering boom times for everything from gibbons to wild boar. But reproduction is not just about seeds. It's about partnership. Over 90% of tropical trees rely on animals for pollination and seed dispersal, a transaction of food for mobility. The classic example is the fig and the fig wasp, a relationship so specific and codependent that each of the 750-plus fig species has its own unique wasp pollinator. The female wasp, often just a few millimeters long, enters the sealed inflorescence of the fig, losing her wings and antennae in the process. She lays her eggs and simultaneously pollinates the tiny flowers inside. Her offspring develop, mate inside the fig, and the new generation of females, now dusted with pollen, emerge to fly off and find a new fig tree, continuing the cycle. No wasp, no figs, dozens of species of birds, bats, and monkeys that depend on figs as a keystone food source would starve. This is mutualism at its most extreme. For larger seeds, the jungle relies on its megafauna, the gardeners of the forest. Elephants, with their massive digestive systems and far-ranging trails, are perhaps the most important. They consume vast quantities of fruit from trees like the balanitis, and their gut scarifies the hard seed coats. The seeds are then deposited, fertilized, in a nutrient-rich packet of dung, often kilometers from the parent tree. The extinction of forest elephants doesn't just mean the loss of a majestic animal. It means the slow, certain death of the tree species that evolved to depend on them, leading to a silent, cascading collapse known as ecological meltdown. Tapirs, toucans, hornbills, and even fruit-eating fish like the pace during flooded seasons all play this crucial dispersal role. The cycles extend beyond reproduction to the very elements of life. The rainforest is a closed-loop recycler of water. Through a process called transpiration, a single large tree can release hundreds of liters of water vapor into the air each day. This creates its own weather, forming the characteristic mist and clouds that blanket the canopy. This moisture eventually condenses and falls as rain, often right back onto the forest itself in a perpetual, biotic-driven hydrological cycle that also influences regional and even global weather patterns, like the flying rivers of vapor that travel from the Amazon to water the agricultural heartlands of South America. The nutrient cycle is equally tight. When a leaf falls or an animal dies, the decomposer army fungi, bacteria, insects swarms in with astonishing speed, breaking down complex organic matter into basic nutrients that are almost instantly absorbed by the shallow, mat-like root systems of the surrounding plants. There's no nutrient-rich humus layer like in temperate forests. Everything is taken up immediately in a fierce competition. This intense recycling is why rainforest soils, when cleared for agriculture, are so famously poor and infertile. All the wealth was held in the living biomass above, not the dirt below. The pulse of the jungle, therefore, is this rhythmic, interconnected beat of flowering, fruiting, feeding, dying, and decomposing, a grand, ancient orchestration where every organism, from the smallest pollinator to the largest disperser, is a critical musician. The removal of a single section of the orchestra doesn't just create silence in one part, it throws the entire symphony out of tune, leading to a gradual, then catastrophic, silence. For tens of thousands of years, the story of the deep jungle was not one of human absence, but of profound and intricate symbiosis. The arrival of Homo sapiens in these ecosystems was not a cataclysm, but the introduction of a new, highly intelligent primate that learned to weave itself into the existing web. This long chapter of coevolution stands in stark, devastating contrast to the modern crisis of extraction and eradication that defines our current relationship. Indigenous and traditional communities, from the Amazon's Kayapo and Yanomami to the Panan of Borneo and the Pygmies of Central Africa, developed a deep, granular knowledge of the jungle that modern science is only beginning to apprehend. They did not see a wilderness to be conquered, but a territory to be inhabited, a pharmacy, a library, and a spiritual sanctuary. Their practices were, and are, based on enhancing the forest complexity rather than simplifying it. Agroforestry systems, like the incredible forest islands or apete created by Amazonian peoples, involved selectively planting and managing hundreds of useful tree and plant species, fruit, nuts, medicine, fiber to create hyperproductive patches of human-modified forest that mimic natural succession and maintain biodiversity. They practiced sophisticated forms of hunting and fishing with strict taboos and rotational systems that prevented overexploitation. They used controlled, cool ground fires to manage undergrowth, enrich soils, and promote the growth of desirable plants. Perhaps most intriguingly, there is growing evidence that vast tracts of what we considered pristine rainforest are, in fact, the legacy of these ancient human interactions. Terra Prat, Amazonian dark earths, being the most famous example, a rich, self-regenerating soil created by centuries of intentional charcoal, compost, and pottery shard deposition. These societies lived within the carrying capacity of the forest, and in turn, the forest provided for them in a sustainable cycle measured in millennia. The rupture of this symbiosis began with colonialism and accelerated exponentially with the globalized industrial economy. The modern crisis has a clear, multi-pronged architecture. The primary driver globally is agribusiness, particularly for cattle ranching, responsible for about 80% of deforestation in the Amazon, and commodity crops like soy, much of which feeds cattle, palm oil in Southeast Asia, and cocoa. This is not small-scale farming, it is large-scale land clearing, often facilitated by illegal logging roads, land grabbing, and violence against indigenous defenders. Logging itself, both legal and illegal, targets high-value hardwoods like mahogany and teak, creating fragile, degraded forests that are much more susceptible to the second wave of destruction, fire. Mining, for gold, diamonds, coltan, for electronics, and bauxite for aluminum, poisons rivers with mercury and cyanide, and carves huge, toxic wounds into the forest floor. The infrastructure accompanying these industries, roads, dams, pipelines, fragments habitats, creating isolated islands of forest too small to support viable populations of large animals, leading to genetic bottlenecking and local extinctions. The data is chilling and unequivocal. According to Global Forest Watch, the tropics lost 11.1 million hectares of tree cover in 2021 alone, with 3.75 million of that being primary, irreplaceable rainforest. That's the equivalent of losing 10 football fields of primary forest every single minute. The biodiversity loss is immeasurable. We are likely losing thousands of species annually, most before they are even described by science. Each disappearance is a lost thread in the web, weakening the entire system's resilience. Furthermore, these forests are colossal carbon sinks. Their destruction releases billions of tons of stored CO2, making deforestation a primary contributor to climate change, which in turn creates feedback loops of drought and increased fire risk that further devastate the forests. We have transitioned from being a symbiotic participant in the jungles, story to being its most potent, non-natural destructive force, severing the ancient connections that sustained both the forest and its human inhabitants for generations in a shockingly short span of time. Standing at this precipice, looking back at the ancient, complex wonder we have unraveled and forward at a scarred, simplified landscape, we face humanity's ultimate choice, a path of continued erosion or a path of radical restoration. The good news is that the solutions are as multi-layered as the jungle itself, and they are being proven to work where they are given a chance. The single most effective strategy is not a new technology, but the legal recognition and vigorous protection of indigenous land rights. Study after study has shown that indigenous territories, where communities have secure tenure, have deforestation rates significantly lower than even government-protected areas. They are the forest's best guardians, combining ancient knowledge with a vested existential interest in its health. Supporting organizations that fund their legal battles and provide them with tools for monitoring and defense like satellite phones and drones is perhaps the highest impact conservation action. The second pillar is transforming the economic drivers. This means creating transparent, enforceable supply chains where companies are held accountable for deforestation in their products, be it beef, leather, soy, palm oil, or timber. Consumer pressure works. The moratorium on soy from deforested Amazon lands, while imperfect, showed that. Supporting certifications like RSPO for palm oil or FSC for wood, and demanding stronger legislation like the EU's recent deforestation-free products regulation are crucial. We must also support economic alternatives for communities living near forests, such as sustainable non-timber forest products like Brazil nuts, AK rubber, and medicinal plants, and community-based ecotourism that values the standing forest more than its clear land. Technologically, we are in a golden age of monitoring. Satellite networks like Planet Labs provide daily, high-resolution imagery of the entire globe. AI algorithms can now detect illegal logging in near real time, alerting authorities and activists. Camera traps and acoustic sensors are providing unprecedented data on wildlife populations. These tools empower enforcement and science. Then there is the ambitious, hopeful science of restoration. Projects are moving beyond simple tree planting monocultures to ecological restoration, which seeks to rebuild the complex architecture, species mix, and functions of the original forest. Techniques include using nurse trees to create microclimates for slower-growing climax species, direct seeding of diverse native species, and even using drones to seed inaccessible areas. Forests of the Future experiment in Costa Rica and the monumental effort to reforest the Atlantic forest in Brazil show that with time and commitment, ecosystems can heal, though they may never fully regain their ancient, pristine complexity. But this is where you, the viewer, come in, and this is the final, critical call to action. This is not a distant problem. Your choices and your voice are part of the system. First, educate yourself relentlessly. Use tools like Global Forest Watch or the SPOT initiative to research company practices. Second, use your consumer power. Be mindful of your consumption of beef, palm oil, and unsustainable wood paper products. Choose recycled, choose certified, choose less. Third, amplify, and support. Donate to or volunteer with legitimate frontline organizations like the Rainforest Trust, the Amazon Conservation Team, or Survival International, which work directly with indigenous communities. Use your social media to share information and hold corporations and politicians accountable. Fourth, vote with the climate and the planet in mind. At every level of government, demanding policies that protect forests and respect land rights internationally. The ancient jungle does not have a voice in our parliaments or boardrooms. It needs yours to be its proxy. The shocking hook that began this journey, the staggering rate of loss, is not a foregone conclusion. It is the current trajectory, but trajectories can be changed. The deep jungle, with its towering trees, its chemical whispers, its pulsating cycles, and its ancient human partnerships, represents the pinnacle of life's creativity on this planet. It is a library burning down before we have read most of its books. Its fate is not sealed. It is being written right now, and you hold a pen. So let's make this moment count. If this deep dive has reshaped your understanding of these vital ecosystems, prove it. Smash the like button to push this knowledge to every corner of the platform. Subscribe and hit the bell because this channel is committed to turning awareness into action, and we will be exploring specific solutions, technologies, and stories of hope in videos to come. Most importantly, start a conversation. Share this video with one person today, a friend, a family member, and tell them one fact that stunned you. Break the silence. The ancient trees have stood for centuries. They are waiting to see if we, in our fleeting moment of influence, will choose to be the generation that finally listened, learned, and stood guard. The call to action is not just for this video, it's for the future. Let's answer it.